So hopefully you can see a slide that says reflections on the product owner role. So that's the topic I'd like to discuss with you today. And I'd like to start by sharing a few thoughts, a few of my takes or perspectives on the product owner role. And then I'm very much looking forward to answering your questions and hearing your views and your perspectives. A common characterization of the product owner is the person who is responsible for maximizing the value of the product. And that's sort of the way the Scrum guide describes the role. And the product owner role, as I'm sure you all know, emerged in the context of Scrum many years ago, in the second half of the 1990s. And looking at this description, it looks rather reasonable, I find, and pretty straightforward, rather harmless. So what's the big deal? Why is there still so much confusion about the product owner role, what the role is all about, and how the role should be applied? So I thought, in order to maybe shed some light and again share my take on the product owner role, let's start by unpicking the name product owner. Now, product owner seems to suggest that it's the individual who owns a product, and that then leads me to the next question. Well, what is a product? Different people have different perspectives, but I find having worked with different organizations for a few years now, that in many larger enterprises, there's quite a bit of confusion about what a product is, certainly what a digital product is. And I remember being invited to a workshop at a geodata company here in the UK. And, based on the prep work I did, I was expecting 5 to 8 people as workshop attendees. And I turn up and there are about 25 people in the room. So I say, wow, it's great to see so many of you here. And it's great to see that there's so much interest in this workshop, but this is a workshop for the product owners. And I was sort of expected most of the people to leave, but nobody moved. So I was a bit surprised by that. And I said, well, surely you can't all be product owners? And people said, like, yeah, we are. So it's, as it then turned out, there was quite a bit of confusion about what a product is and therefore, what it means to be a product owner. Now, my definition of a product is that it's an entity or an asset, you could say, that creates value for the users, so for a distinct group of people, and for the business, for the organization that creates, develops, and provides the product. So another way to look at this is to say a product is a value-creating vehicle. It's means to an end, and the end is to create value for the users and value for the business. Now, what about the product owner then? Well, for me, as I indicated earlier, the product owner is somebody who owns a product, is responsible for a product in its entirety, but also then authorized to make decision for that product and all aspects of that product. Because otherwise, I don't really think it's fair that the person should be held responsible or accountable for maximizing the value that the product creates. So if you don't own a product holistically, if you don't have the necessary empowerment, the necessary authority, then I don't think you can really live up to this responsibility here. Now, of course, not everybody who has the role or the title of a product owner necessarily owns a product in its entirety. And in fact, quite commonly when I speak to people and ask them, oh, so what you do? And they say, I'm a product owner. Often it's not necessarily a product that the individuals own. So I thought it might be helpful to see what different kinds or types of ownership there are. And I'll start again with the Scrum product owner. And as I've already explained, my take on this is that a Scrum product owner owns a product. So again, an asset, something that creates a value for a group of users, possibly customers, and the business. But then, products consist of parts. And when you go to an online website like, say, Amazon.co.uk or johnlewis.com or whoever your favorite online retailer might be, then typically you have the ability to search for a product and see if the online retailer has the product that you're interested in. Now, I personally would consider that capability a feature, a part of the product, a step in the user journey, rather than a product in its own right, because I don't really think that search on an online retailer's website, generally speaking, generates enough value for the users and the business. And so if that's an example of a feature, then it might still be beneficial to have somebody who takes care of it, who manages it, who owns it. It might be quite a complex feature. And so we might want to use a person that's got the title of a feature owner or plays the role of a feature owner. Now, the difference is that a Scrum product owner will be responsible for the entire product and maximizing the value of this product, whereas the feature owner will be more focused on a specific capability and responsible for maximizing the value of that specific feature. So both are interesting jobs, both can be very demanding, but the feature owner job is more focused, I would suggest. So as the feature owner, you still want to understand the market and the user needs, but things like monetization, things like the business model, things like understanding general market trends and the competition are probably not quite as important. But then, of course, there are more product parts, and another product part would be an architecture building block or a component. And again, for bigger ones, it might make sense to have dedicated owners. And I call those individuals component owners. And by the way, that was the reason in the story I started to tell you earlier why there were so many product owners in the room when I ran this product owner workshop. And most of them weren't Scrum product owners in the sense I've described it here, but most of them were in fact component owners. And the reason for this was that the introduction of Scrum started in development, and most development teams were component teams, were owning architecture building blocks, and said, well, we're now a Scrum team, therefore we need a product owner and a Scrum master. And so most of those product owners, or component owners, I should say, were senior developers or architects. Again, being a component owner can be a very fulfilling job. But I'd say it's different again to the Scrum product owner. Component owner needs in-depth technical debt. In-depth technical debt. Hopefully not. God, in-depth technical skills. How do I get from skills to debt? Never mind. In-depth technical skills, whereas I don't think that's necessarily the case for feature or product owners. And then I sometimes meet people who say, I'm a product owner, but after talking to them, I find out what they own isn't so much the product in its entirety. It's more the product details. It's more the tactical decisions. And then often these individuals are SAFe product owners. So they're product owners in the context of the SAFe framework, the Scaled Agile framework. And again, that can be an interesting job, but I think being a SAFe product owner is rather different from being a Scrum product owner. And I'll say a few more words about those differences on the next slide. And then to complete this picture, when you have several products and those products are maybe related in one way or another, then it may make sense to extract shared assets, services, components, and encapsulate them in a platform. And for such a platform, for such an internal platform, for such a technical product, it may make sense to have a dedicated platform owner. Now, this platform owner is essentially a Scrum product owner for, again, as I said, an internal technical product. The reason that I've called this role here a platform owner is to emphasize the fact that it is a technical product, and again, that this individual will require in-depth technical skills. as the platform users are likely to be the development team members who work on the products and the applications that sit on top of this platform. Now we have a group of products. We have, in fact, 2 products and a platform. And if we say the platform is like an internal product, then we have 3 products. So we really have a little product portfolio. And whenever we have a product portfolio, a group of related products, it can make sense to have a dedicated person who manages or owns that portfolio. So a product portfolio owner. And the job of this individual would be to maximize the overall value of the product portfolio that the product portfolio creates. So these are different types of ownership. Depending on the scope of ownership and depending on how deep the ownership is, as I said, playing the various roles can be very interesting and very challenging and very rewarding. So I hope you don't see this as being judgmental in any way. That was certainly not my intentions. I hope that anybody who works as a feature or component owner, a safe product owner, doesn't feel bad in any way. But really what my intention was just to bring some clarity and say, well, what's the intention behind the Scrum product owner? What does it mean to own a product, at least in a Scrum context? And how does that differ from owning something else? Now, as I said, I want to talk a little bit more about the difference between the safe product owner and the Scrum product owner, because I feel there's quite a bit of confusion when it comes to those 2 types of product owners. And in a way, I think, or in hindsight, certainly for me, it's a mistake that SAFe reused the same term or used the same term as the Scrum framework, because these 2 roles really, at least from my perspective, do look quite different. So in order to explain the difference, I'm using a very simple model here. In fact, a simplified version of Mike Cohn's planning onion, vision, strategy, and tactics, or you could also say execution instead of tactics, a very common distinction. Now, the Scrum product owner, in my mind, should own a product top to bottom, should have full stack ownership, should own the vision, or help communicate a vision and use the vision to align stakeholders and development team members, a vision that would describe the purpose of a product, the positive change the product should create, but then also should be empowered to make the necessary strategic decisions around the market segments that a product should address, who the users should be, the value proposition, the specific problem that the product should address, or the benefit it should offer, the standout features, the way the product is differentiated from the competition, and the business goals, and how those higher level goals are then translated into midterm, tangible, measurable, more specific goals on something like a product roadmap, for instance. And of course, the product owner should guide the product backlog work and prioritize the backlog. So that's my perspective on the Scrum product owners. Again, holistic ownership in the sense from top to bottom, owning all the relevant aspects of the product and being empowered to make all the relevant decisions. Now, I view the safe product owner, in contrast, as being very much focused on the product details or the tactics, as working on the backlog, or working on a team backlog, and working with a development team in order to help the team transform product backlog items into working software. And as the safe product owner has essentially partial ownership here, we need another role that then takes care of the rest of this the simplified planning onion. And in SAFe, that role is called the safe product manager. So we've got partial ownership here, or you could say we've got shared or split ownership here. In Scrum, it's integrated, one person, top to bottom. In SAFe, it's split across multiple roles. Now, personally, I've always understood the Scrum product owner to be an Agile product manager, and that's the way I've described it in my book, Agile Product Management with Scrum. So I've personally never quite understood the idea, the concept of limiting the product owner role to the tactics or the details. But anyway, for whatever reason, that's what SAFe has done. So I think I'd suggest that, when you talk about product owners in your company, you're being explicit, and you're saying, what kind of product owner do you mean? Do you mean a Scrum product owner or a SAFe product owner? Because those two roles, well, they're quite distinct. And in addition to that, I tend to advise my clients to either choose the term product owner or product manager. I find that using both terms at the same time can create quite a bit of, well, confusion and division. So I've worked with organizations where the product managers were desperate to become cool, trendy product owners and finally be agile, or whatever that might mean. And I've worked with clients where it was the other way around, where the product owners really, really wanted to grow up and finally become product managers and be empowered and make strategic decisions. And I'm not sure that that's good for the organization overall. The next thing I'd like to talk about briefly, and by the way, so my intention is, I should have said that at the beginning, apologies. My intention is to speak for about sort of 35 minutes, 40 max, and then take your questions. So a few words about the right interactions, and that sort of is really intended to help me position the product owner role. Where does the product owner live, so to speak? Well, the product owner for me lives between the users, customers, the business stakeholders, and development teams. So let me start with the users and customers. I find it's very, very valuable when product owners, Scrum product owners, are able to directly connect with users and customers. And my rule of thumb is at least once a quarter, try to get in touch with selected users and customers and observe how they use your product or competitor products, and interview them, talk to them. In addition to collecting analytics data and evaluating that data, hopefully on a regular basis, reaching out to people and either meeting people in person or online, I think is extremely valuable to develop empathy and be able to empathize with the users and really understand what is working for them and what isn't working for them. And that helps you improve your product, and it helps you come up with new ideas to progress it. Business stakeholders for a commercial product will be somebody from marketing, sales, support, service, operations, maybe finance, or other business units. Depends very much on your product and the organization. And again, I suggest that you try and engage early and frequently with the stakeholders and involve them in the product discovery and the development work, so that you can leverage their expertise. You can create a shared understanding and secure strong buy-in, particularly for the important strategic decisions of your products. My experience suggests that when you give people the opportunity to contribute, and if you ensure that people are heard, they're more likely to support a decision than when you create a strategy and you create a product roadmap, and then you go to the business stakeholders and say, like, here it is, and essentially have to do a sales job and try and persuade them. And then, of course, the development teams, Scrum product owners, as I'm sure you all know, interact with development teams, agree on a sprint goal, answer questions that might arise during the sprint, and then provide feedback to the product increment, and see if the sprint goal has been met or not. So what I sometimes find is that some product owners are really comfortable working with development teams and have too much of an internal focus, and other product owners are very comfortable reaching out to the users and customers and business stakeholders and have sometimes maybe too much of an outward focus. But I think what's helpful is trying to balance those three groups and try not to neglect any of them, at least not for an extended period of time. So I think it's perfectly okay for a sprint or two to focus more on working with the development team, and then maybe for a sprint or so, focusing more on talking to users and customers. But again, try and avoid to neglect any of those groups for a longer period of time. Another way to look at this is to say, as a Scrum product owner, you're very much a connector. You're very much try to bring together an understanding of the users and their needs with the knowledge of the business stakeholders and the tech knowledge that the development teams have. And hopefully that then gives rise to a successful product. And building on what I've just said, particularly sort of not neglecting any of those groups and kind of connecting those different groups of individuals, I'd like to sort of talk a little bit about what I would regard as the leadership focus of the product owner role. So here we have the Scrum product owner, here we have the development team and the Scrum master, the three classic Scrum roles, and the connection between those individuals should be trustful and respectful. So we have close and open collaboration. That's, I guess, the ideal. Now, what I sometimes find is that Scrum product owners in their work, because there's so much to being a product owner, that the job is, I find, very interesting, but it's also very multifaceted. So again, there's lots to it. If you reflect on this diagram I showed you with vision, strategy, and tactics, if you take care of strategic work and discovery work and tactical work and product backlog and balancing those different work streams, those two work streams alone can be quite challenging. And so sometimes I find that Scrum product owners sort of kind of lose the focus a little bit. But for me, the job of a Scrum product owner is to provide product leadership. And that means offering a vision, product strategy, and roadmap. Hopefully those plans are understood and accepted and agreed upon by the development team and the business stakeholders. And then it guides the product backlog prioritization and build a stakeholder community, engage the stakeholders, and build good connections with the key stakeholders. The development team, however, should be empowered to have the design and technology leadership. And that means deciding the UX design, making all the necessary technical developments and architecture related decisions, and testing the product, and self-organization. So organizing the work, determining how the work is done and who does what, and coordinating the work during the sprint. And the Scrum Master, finally, for me, has process and people leadership. And that means being a process and method coach, not only to the development team, but also to the product owner and to the stakeholders, and helping the individuals work together effectively, maybe suggesting ways how to better collaborate, be it a tool, be it using a different decision-making rule, for instance, or a specific decision-making process. Or establishing ground rules. Those could be good ways to help people collaborate more effectively, but also facilitating organizational change. I think the Scrum Master is referred to as a change agent in the first Scrum book, which I believe was published in 2002, if I'm not mistaken. And that's often an aspect that's sort of forgotten. But if there are any organizational impediments, then it's the Scrum Master who should really help address them. There is one more shared set of responsibilities, and that's, at least in my view, user research. That should be shared between Scrum product owner, development team. Selecting and agreeing on the sprint goal, again, should be shared, and working on the product backlog. So that should be, again, an activity Scrum product owner and development team members do jointly, do together. Now, what I often observe is that Scrum product owners try and compensate. So, for instance, it's rather common when I work with product owners that the individuals don't have a qualified or sufficiently available Scrum Master. Quite often there is no Scrum Master at all. And then it can be very tempting for the Scrum product owner to say, well, my team does need some support around development process and collaboration, and maybe I can help. And I think it's great, if you're in a similar position and you want to help and you care, that's brilliant. But if you, the Scrum product owner, at the same time you try and play the role of a Scrum Master, I think then a job that is already demanding, and as I said earlier, there's lots to it. It has many facets. becomes even more challenging, and it's likely to become unsustainable unless you drop some of your core responsibilities. And sacrificing your health isn't desirable, and dropping some of your core responsibilities isn't either. So in that case, I would suggest that you recognize what you have here is an organizational impediment, and rather than kind of permanently covering the issue and trying to sort of play the Scrum Master role alongside your product owner role, that you focus on your product owner job and try and escalate the issue and work with the right people in the organization to find a qualified Scrum Master. And the other thing I'd like to say is it's not uncommon that I find product owners, or that I speak to product owners who think they must feed their development teams with detailed, beautiful, refined, spec'd out user stories. Now, a user story is, at least in my opinion, is always meant to be, pretty sketchy. And as Mike Cohn, I think, writes in his book, User Stories Applied, a user story is a narrative plus the conversation. But nowhere does it say anywhere in the Scrum guides that the Scrum product owner should be a product backlog manager or a user story writer, a scribe. When you work with a new development team, a team that's new to an agile way of working, or a team that hasn't worked with the product that people are building or within the domain, and doesn't really know much about the users and the market, then it's natural that those individuals will want detailed stories or detailed product backlog items. And sometimes, people are just conditioned by how work is done traditionally, where a tech team would expect a detailed requirement specification. But I think rather than trying to forever feed the development team with detailed product backlog items and do a lot of work, I think what you should do is really involve those individuals in the product backlog work and the product backlog refinement work, and try and transfer knowledge into the development team. Maybe try and get the development team, or at least some of the members, directly exposed to user feedback. So again, people understand better what works for the users and what doesn't work for the users. And that allows the development team then to own the solution, own the product details. So as the Scrum product owner, you're not kind of permanently drawn too much into supporting, working with the development team and, the execution, but you have time for product discovery and product strategy. Now, I'm not suggesting you shouldn't care about the development team. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't be involved at all in the tactical work. But again, it's about finding a balance and finding a healthy balance. And then I think the last thing that I wanted to touch upon is to briefly talk about skills based on what I've suggested so far. I would, I would recommend that you look at 3 sets of skills in order to become a competent, well-rounded product owner. The first one are the tactical skills. So those are skills around product backlog management, product backlog prioritization, so prioritization factors, capturing product backlog items, for instance, as user stories, maybe personas, creating user models, maybe some technical knowledge. So I don't expect Scrum product owners, generally speaking, to be able to have in-depth technical skills or to be able to program. But I think knowing a little bit about the technologies and having an interest in them can be very helpful in communicating with the development team and understanding some of the challenges that the team members may go through. And I think generally speaking, I find that, product owners are usually fairly well trained or fairly well versed, capable when it comes to that space. But in addition to the tactical skills, I think it's helpful to acquire the necessary strategic skills or deepen them. So know a little bit about product lifecycle and lifecycle management, know about how you can create a meaningful, inspiring vision, what a strategy is and what it means to validate a strategy, how you can derive a product roadmap from a strategy, what a business model is and how you can create one, how you can maybe create a financial forecast, particularly when you look after a commercial revenue generating product. So those are strategic skills that I feel are helpful. And finally, what I call leadership skills. So when you think back to the previous slide that showed a Venn diagram where there were the users and customers and the business stakeholders and the development teams. There are lots of people on there. And sometimes I think the term product management is not quite right, because it's so much about connecting people and bringing people together and understanding people's interests and needs and aligning people. And in order to be able to do that effectively, I think leadership skills are required. One of the key challenges we have as product owners, and in fact that's true for any product role, is that we lack what's referred to as transactional power. We don't have the authority to tell people what to do, no matter how respected we are in the organization. And so we rely on people's support and goodwill, and we rely on our ability to lead people by influencing them. So things around trust building, things around development, deepening, cultivating empathy, things around listening, training your listening capabilities, things around collaborative decision making, or in some cases negotiation, and dealing with conflicts and disagreements, I think are really valuable skills for product owners to acquire. So, oh yes, that's the competent Scrum product owner. There you go. So I hope what I've had to share was a little bit helpful for you. To sum up, I recommend that you reflect on what you own. Is it a product, a feature, component, something else? Maybe it's a portfolio. Maybe it's a part of the product, like a safe product owner. And again, I think that's just helpful to understand. And then I find it also helpful to view the Scrum product owner as a product management role, and understands that in order to be able to effectively play this role, we require product management skills. So, leadership, strategy, tactical skills. And at the end of the day, I think what really matters shouldn't be our job roles and titles. So if we're called an XYZ owner, a Scrum product owner, a this owner, a that owner, a this manager, a that manager, what really matters is the good that we do for the users in our businesses, and the value we create for the beneficiaries of our products and the organizations that invest in them. So again, I hope this talk was a little bit useful for you, and I very much look forward to your questions now. Just to plug my website, you can find more information on product ownership and the product owner role on my website. And I've written a few books. My latest one is called How to Lead in Product Management. So if you're particularly interested in those leadership skills, then you might find it helpful to take a look at the book and see if reading it might be valuable for you. And if you don't get your question answered for whatever reason, then please don't be shy. Just reach out to me via email. So yes, thank you.